Don't call your clients when there is a deal. The best communication is when there is no deal. Let me understand where you're developed. What do you just made an acquisition? What does that mean for your needs? And it's at that time where you get unfiltered, clear direction.
Welcome to the next episode of Great Rising. With me today is Thomas Flohr, CEO of VistaJet and founder of VistaJet. As we get into every Great Rising episode, I'm going to start with Thomas. He's going to introduce himself, and then we'll get into some questions. So tell us a little bit about yourself, Thomas.
Yeah, great to meet you. I'm glad to be on today. I'm in Europe right now. Summer is over, back to full work. However, as you can imagine, the summer is extremely busy for Vista. A lot of people from all over the world really coming to Europe and visiting Europe. So usually the summer months are the most busiest ones, which just come off a incredibly busy season.
When you grew up in Switzerland, at what point did you think, hey, my life's probably going to be a little bit different from those around me?
Well, look, I don't know. I was always quite ambitious as a person, and I always liked to challenge a status quo when it didn't make sense to me. A lot of things make sense, but there are certain things that don't make sense, and I had the urge to challenge when something was that I saw out of balance, and that really eventually drove me to leave my parents' house at the age of 18, and I ventured off to Munich to study at the Ludwig Maximilian University, political science, and kind of like opened the spectrum for me to understand how world politics and history and in the big sense economy and the world economy is working, and that excited me.
Generally speaking, with the podcast being Grit, that there's something that we found in somebody's childhood that kind of gives them that difference. That challenging the status quo, do you think that came from a mother, father, teacher, somebody special in your life, somebody you didn't like in your life? Whatever. Where do you think that got fostered the most?
I think what I saw was that when people around me accepted the status quo, then they just continued to do what the status quo was, but they didn't see the opportunities that I saw. And I don't know, I always saw other opportunities. I'll give a small story. We usually went to Italy for holidays, but then once we went to France and there were no organized beaches on the Atlantic coast, and so there were no umbrellas, and of course there was strong sun, and my parents ended up buying an umbrella. And then 2 weeks later we left and couldn't fit in the car, and I said to my dad, let me resell these umbrellas because it doesn't fit in the car, but I keep the cash. So I just looked at the parking lot of who just arrived pale rather than tanned, and it was sold within 30 minutes. So it's that kind of thinking that I love.
I love that story. And you talked about it, people that just are accepting the status quo, stay the status quo. As you look back, having some significant success, what's the one reason or the one thing that you see out there that keeps people still doing that as you look around it, and maybe those that haven't achieved the success you have?
Well, for me, a lot comes down to the people you surround yourself with, and I think if you're consistently open-minded to surround yourself with people who drive you new ideas or come from a different industry and kind of like open your eyes to how things are done elsewhere, it injects the necessary energy, positive energy, to keep on developing yourself. So flip side of that is, of course, if you keep on surrounding yourself what makes you feel comfortable, you very fast get stuck into what might be a standstill. And so for me, the human factor is very key. If you have that entrepreneurial spirit inside you, you just need to make sure that you keep on pushing the envelope, and that at a certain size, especially in a company, it's important to inject that new blood and thinking in the company.
Yeah, it's to get to the size that your company is. There's those that start with you, and there's those that get you to that next level, right? How do you juggle in your mind that loyalty to the person that got you there, that loves what they do, but they just can't get to that next level with, hey, for us to go to where we need to go, we need to make a change?
Well, I first and foremost, I look, if somebody really not changing, then we eventually come to an agreement to either find a role that is suitable or eventually also sometimes there's nothing wrong in parting ways. But I think the concept that we apply is different. I believe in entrepreneurship. I try to give my direct reports next level down enough entrepreneurial freedom that they can develop themselves and therefore drive the company forward with that level of entrepreneurship. And so they're handpicked individuals with that kind of like charisma and capabilities. And I think, when you have that entrepreneurship inside yourselves, then you can adapt to many things as the industry or as the market might develop. So I think it's in the concept of allowing the right people to join that you keep the spirit alive.
What's the number one quality in that next level of reports that you're looking for that are reporting to you?
I think they're independent thinkers, and that comes sometimes with being maybe opinionated, but that's nothing wrong with it. But when we do get together and we might sometimes disagree, then ultimately we'll take a decision. Somebody has to take the decision, and we move forward as one united team. But I think the balance between entrepreneurship and at the same time truly believing in the team and in the team's success, I think that is the combination that is the forward driving success factor of how we have built the company.
Yeah. As you're building, you run into low points, right? Like Elon talks about, being hours from being out of money, or Branson talks about all of his failures quite a bit. Any failures that stick out to you that you think motivated you to not have another failure like that?
Well, look, I mean, if you look at a 20-year history, of course, there have been highs and lows, and there have been sometimes decisions being made maybe a touch too early or a touch too late. And I'm thinking about going to the United States. I entered in 13, 14, simply because I listened too much, and people said, ultimate luxury will not be appreciated. It's a commodity market in the U.S., and that was nonsense. If I look today, half of our business is in North America, and the U.S. market is extremely excited about and a highest level of product and service that it can offer. So that's one example, and of course, sometimes when you look at the counter-cyclical behavior within COVID, I think we did a lot of things right, but I think I should have been even more probably aggressive or more determined, because our customers told us exactly what they want. They said, Thomas, when the slightest opportunity opens up, we need to fly again. And I should have probably been slightly more bullish with the positioning of the company during that downturn. But again, you learn, and as long as you're open to learn, I think you continue to develop as a person, and you develop as a company.
When I was a kid, I remember looking up to billionaires, thinking, "Gosh, that's the success. That's what it is." In the last 10 years, you see this kind of social trolling of like, as if billionaires didn't deserve it, or the idea of even private jet channel, with global warming and that sort of thing. In your head, how do you stay, inspired to keep going, given some of the things that's like you get beat down sometimes, right? From just social media and some of the other things around you. Like what used to be celebrated is now almost looked at as like negative at sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think it's a general phenomenon of social media that we're all exposed to today. I mean, there is so much noise and so many opinions, and of course, everybody has the right for their own opinion. But what we're focusing the most on is what are customers thinking? Do they give us the thumbs up? Where can we improve? Where are areas where we need to step up the game? They're guiding us, and I think you need to have that filter, and the filter is driven by very, very religiously of how our clients believe we're serving them, what their forward thinking is, because it allows us to position the company to their needs, and I think that is a very, very healthy way to keep the focus. And at the end, it's the client who decides, and deeply understanding them and taking their criticism or their compliments is for me the driving factor.
So kind of filtering out that noise. If they're not our clients, then we're not going to worry too much about what they have to say. I like that a lot, actually. I think that too often, and you see it, gosh, in marketing and just the mistakes that get made where brands try to appeal to people that aren't even their clients, and then all of a sudden they realize, wait a minute, this was a mistake, and they're trying to go backwards, and so staying hyper focused on who your clients are and making them happy it requires discipline, though.
There's discipline and communication. Sometimes don't call your clients when there is a deal. The best communication is when there is no deal. Okay. And don't call them when there is a renewal or something. It's like, let me understand where you're developed. What do you just made an acquisition? What does that mean for your needs? And it's at that time where you get unfiltered, clear direction. And then obviously, you have to have many of those conversations to kind of like align to what the next trend might be. And I think that's what we're doing pretty well.
How many core clients do you guys have kind of worldwide?
I mean, look, overall, we have clients in the 10,000s. We do over 100,000 flights per year. But I think that the core client base is probably somewhere between 1,500 and 2,000. Yeah.
The reason I ask is, that's still a lot of relationships, right? So how do you keep that one-on-one relationship with that many clients where you're able to tailor to those needs?
Well, we have about 150 executives, I always say, in any major metropolitan area in the world, whether it's in Tokyo or in Mumbai or obviously in New York, Chicago, and Austin, and in Milan, it doesn't matter. And they would typically deeply understand the local market. They would know where these private jet users are, and being at large corporations, being at family offices, ultra high net worth individuals, and they would deeply understand their specific needs. And that's why we're not selling a box. We're not selling here you got to buy $100 per year. No, we tailor. First, we want to understand exactly what the client needs. We listen a lot. Then we run that information against our huge database of client behavior and potential efficiencies. And it's only then that we're tailoring a program to our clients. And I think that is really the way to do it, because if we tailor it in a way that the client is happy, it helps us with that information to actually be more efficient. And yeah, that's kind of like how we do it.
So then fast forward, it's a cyclical, but hopefully we avoid. But in that, how do you stay in a moment where you're having success, but also plan for what could be a turn down? As you hear, economists talk about how tariffs are going to mess things up or whatever does that happen. How do you stay prepped so that, all too often you hear of companies that do great on the way up, but then they don't weather the storm on the way down? What's kind of, how do you plan for that in your situation?
Well, look, I think it's first and foremost, it's a culture, right? You cannot plan for something unexpected. It has to be in your DNA that, that you're a prudent company with risk, and a prudent company on how you structure your balance sheet. And I mean, in these 21 years, there have been, probably any sort of downturn one can think of. There was great financial crisis in around 2010, 2011. We were a purely European company. It was the European debt crisis, if you remember. It was actually a European ash cloud in 2010. Half of Europe, the airspace was closed, and as we went through, these more than 2 decades, we have seen very, very significant downturns, and I think what made the company be prepared is that first and foremost we have a subscription program. That means we have 3-year contracts, minimum 3-year contracts with our clients, and with those clients we have an extremely good communication channel, so we understand what they need and what they don't need. But so from a pure financial point of view, obviously a 3-year subscription, we have not seen a downturn lasting longer than maybe 2-3 quarters, and then eventually it bounces back. So you're buffered by the subscription infrastructure that you have in place.
What's your biggest stress? What keeps you up at night?
I mean, look, I think the company size that we have today, I think the focus on making sure that the right talent of people is being hired throughout the organization, that we keep that entrepreneurial spirit going in the next level down, 2 level down, et cetera, that is obviously number one priority. I'm still copied on any service interruption of the company on a global scale. I think I want to understand if something does not go 100% right, why. It's all in the detail, and I think my management team is absolutely equally focused on the greatest detail. And then, certainly not the last point, but equally important is always safety comes first. We have an incredible amount of redundancy built into our safety systems. Is that a factor that keeps me up at night? No, but it's always in the forefront of anyone's mind in the company. So taking more market share ultimately is what we will be doing. There are 24, I don't know what you knew the numbers, there are 25,000 corporate jets in the world. And as the only truly global infrastructure, we only have a 5% market share. So there's still a lot to do for many, many years to come.
When you look at that opportunity and you say, hey, we have 5 of the market share, what's next for you?
I think the rest of this decade here is really about doing more of the same, continuously refining the product slightly. And this is the experience, the client experience, the cabin experience, the communication with the company, etc. But there will not be any. We come through a period of significant acquisitions. We are on every single continent today. We keep on adding airplanes as the demand is growing and as we are taking more market share. But it's very much going to be focused on exactly executing on the business model that we have today. That is predominantly our subscription program. It is continuous investment in the technology infrastructure that we have to make us more efficient, and making sure that the clients are getting the experience that they're expecting from us.
Your core competency, what do you think your superpower is at the company?
I think it is offering our clients a product that is tailored to them. And even in the back end, it might be quite a headache to have all the different optionalities in the contract and all the way to billing and what have you. But I think it's us listening to the client and tailoring the solution to exactly what they need. And think about it, our clients are the wealthiest, most influential people in the world. They don't want boxes. They have a very clear opinion of what they need. As I said, the competition is a fully owned aircraft. With that, for sure, they can do what they want. So if they get rid of that aircraft, we need to be better than the solution of a full aircraft. And the one downside of just owning one aircraft is, I always say, you buy the wrong one. You might buy a Challenger aircraft, but you need to fly to Europe, and then you need a Global Express. You need to stop on the way. Or you buy an ultra long range aircraft and you just hop from Miami to New York, which I think is a waste. It can easily be done on a smaller aircraft. So I think it's that tailoring to the actual needs and then driving financial efficiencies into that solution, which is our biggest success.
Yeah, I would assume being such an asset-heavy business, your finance team has to be on point all the time in terms of creating those efficiencies and debt and the structure around that. With your strength being creating client experiences, how do you balance that with understanding just how intense your finance team is doing everything?
Well, we reached a stage today in the company's development where nearly our entire balance sheet financing is institutionalized between unsecured bonds in the marketplace, EETC, which is typically an enhanced equipment finance, and a term loan B. So we're with such a institutionalized balance sheet, you have institutional debt providers, which is great. There's an enormous amount of reporting discipline and so on and so forth, and our relatively low cost of debt is a testimony for the great work the finance team is doing, and I think from here on forward, it's really simply when you add airplanes, the demand is there, right? It's not that we need to make any major step to enter another continent. If we need 10 more airplanes in the U.S., then it's because the demand is there. And as they roll in and you take delivery, they're pretty much immediately sold out. So it's really these small bite sizes that will grow the balance sheet on one hand, but on the other hand, immediately the positive contribution. That's the benefit of already being everywhere. And the last big, it's not a continent, but a subcontinent we entered, for example, is India. And think about it. Every time you enter a new major geographical area, and you offer guaranteed availability, because our clients, they give up their own airplane. They have guaranteed availability. You need to bring in a number of airplanes before you have the first customer. But all that phase is behind us because of that global infrastructure that we have built. Today we're flying to 196 countries per year. So now it's incremental growth on the basis of every single incremental contract that we're signing.
Yeah, you brought up something earlier that talked about the safety record, and then you also cater to a type of clientele that wants things now, and you talk a lot about the customer experience. How do you balance that safety side and a client saying, demanding where they want to be, when they want to be there? There's got to be, I'm sure you have some unique stories where you've been, people have tried to pressure you into doing things or whatever. How do you balance that the combination of the two?
I mean, look, pressuring somebody into, or pressuring us as a company or a pilot into doing something which is not by the book, it's just not on. It just will not happen. Okay, it's that simple. Sorry, can't do it, and that's it. And that might be a war zone or a conflict zone. We had it earlier this year with some of the flights to Tel Aviv, as an example, or if there is a significant weather storm developing in a certain area, that we'll just say no. And if maybe some competitor says I will go, then we will stand down. That's fine.
Yeah.
but it's in the long run, we're on the right side. We have been on the right side for 21 years in an absolutely 100% clear record. We're extremely proud of that. And that will never be by anyone challengeable, because that's the culture of the company.
Yeah. That's impressive. I know that, with your clientele, you probably get some undue pressure to do things at times. I mean, even as quickly as you mentioned with the airspace being, closed and trying to get out in time or get people, I had friends that were in Dubai, they were trying to get to London in time, or their family to London. And so that I'm sure a lot of pressure comes on you, like, if you don't do this, I'll go somewhere else. And
that's maybe it's very rarely, because I think the clients we do have, we're very open in our communication up front. They really endorse our policy. Very often we're proactively inviting large corporations to come in and do due diligence on our operation center, so they actually see how we operate, so there are no surprises later on. So there is a very high acceptance rate on our policy. On the very odd one out, which maybe only happens a couple of times a year, it's then each client can take a decision which is the right decision, hopefully for them. But we have deep intelligence sources, information, checking against world compliance and what have you, which are running every single flight that we're accepting, and that system has brought us to where we are today in the most safest way, and there is no way around it.
What are the hardest decisions you make today?
Well, look, I mean, it's on my mind is always, what are the next big challenges? What are we doing between now and the end of the decade? What decisions are we taking in terms of the actual, fleet of the company? You always look at efficiencies and how you can actually run your aircraft fleet in the most efficient way, and I think it's these strategic considerations that you need to be deeply involved with to always offer the best service for our clients.
Got it. With every podcast, we let you ask a question. What question do you have for me?
Yeah. Well, look, you're extremely successful, and you interview the brain power of many corporations, etc. Where do you feel that, in which forum you feel you get the clearest answers for your clients and for your spectators? What is your recipe to make this as valuable for your clients in those conversations with your interviews?
Yeah, good question. Vulnerability. I think it's almost a lost art. People get attacked a lot for a lot of different things, and it doesn't feel good to be attacked. And so I think that we have a world that's more closed off. And so those that can find a forum to be vulnerable, and it may not be here, it may be in their own lives, their own, group of friends or YPL or wherever that is. But I think that when we have vulnerable conversations where we actually share where we have imposter syndrome, where we have, our second thoughts, where we fear failure, usually those same people come out with their exact answers themselves. They go out, maybe ask for the answer, but in asking for or the question or admitting, the weakness, all of a sudden they'll get to that answer themselves, and it's like it becomes so clear, and that clarity gives purpose for that next step with everything. So I'd say that.
Is it that they hear themselves talking and then actually it becomes clear to them? Is it as simple as that?
Yeah, honestly, I think so. I think sometimes, like somebody will come and say, all right, I have this problem. And then in preparing for the problem that they want solved, they'll come to their own answers and they'll go, God, this is what I always knew. But we get so many distractions in our day, as you know. We get so many meeting requests and things to do. And I think that we don't get to spend enough time just clearly being introspective and saying, what do I need to do to solve this problem? What do I need to do to be better? And how do I just trust that I'm making the right decision?
Very interesting.
Yeah, that, there's different styles of leadership, as you know. There's that kind of, I'm gonna run it, everybody's gonna follow. There's that consensus building where, hey, I got to make this decision, but I want to get everybody on board, and maybe I want to be reassured where I'm going. And I've seen both work really, really well. I'm curious, what do you, the best leaders that you've been around, and your own leadership as well, what do you think works the best there?
Well, I believe in order to remain scalable, to remain a entrepreneurial driven company and at the same time high growth rate, you must focus on the underlying culture of the company, and then you must be able to give space to your next level leaders for them to perform. And for me, that is the key factor to continue to attract great talent, to have a culture in the company where people feel they can communicate, they can speak up, and it allows to have personalities, individuals, especially in a company that, as ours, as we're dealing with some of the smartest people in the world, and they want to know exactly how things work, and they also know if somebody is trying to cut corners or if you're telling them, if you're telling the truth. And our people are told to be telling the truth. That's how it is. Sometimes great, sometimes not so great, but open communication. So I think it's around that culture, and then allowing the individual to fill it with their own personality, whilst we all subscribe to the same culture.
Yeah. It's good.
Easier said than done.
Yeah, good perspective there from it. When we go through the idea of leaders and mistakes, and you see, people rise and fall and that sort of thing. I had the fortunate, my last podcast was with my father. My father passed about 3 weeks ago, but it was unique because we started to talk about his legacy. And so legacy's been a thing. When you're gone one day, that legacy, what do you hope that?
Frankly speaking, I haven't been spending much time on that thought.
Well, that's good.
I
left from a legacy standpoint.
I feel incredibly
that people
energetic
talk about.
of where I am today, and I just don't want to make up an answer now just to answer a question. I haven't thought through this. I'm extremely focused on the entrepreneurial spirit that I do have today, and I want to deploy it for many years to come. It's what excites me. It's what keeps me up every day, and in a combination with sport and healthy lifestyle, and it's just very privileged that we have the opportunity to serve this kind of client base.
Yeah, you mentioned sport, and I got back into running and track and field, and my kids race and all that fun stuff. But as you are a big sports, do you feel like when you're competing, that is just more? What does that bring to you from a personal standpoint?
First of all, I have to ask you a question. What were you doing in track and field? Because And in my days as a student, I was running 800.
Oh, okay. So I run the steeplechase, and then steeplechase 5K. And my son was actually an 800 runner, so he ran 850 or 150 last year in the 800, and my daughter's an 800 runner. So it's fun to watch the whole family compete. But I'm a 1500 steeplechaser at my core. So
Yeah, wow. Oh, I love the sport. I think when you think about what it gives you and how I think it's first and foremost in the preparation, right? The actual competition is you're hopefully as prepared as you can be. I think it's the discipline to the preparation. The preparation never ends. It's 365 days a year, even if you take one day off a week. But it's on your mind, and I think that's great. I think it's motivating you to go the extra mile, so to say. And when it comes to the day of the competition, you just got to make sure that your mind is able to deploy of what you have prepared for, because it's not only the body, it's the mind as well. And I think that is not much different than in business or in anything else you do. You got to have that good balance between mind and body in order to perform at the highest level over a very long period of time. Okay. Hence, I love endurance sports so much.
yeah, my son is a huge car geek, and Le Mans is like his top the 24-hour race. So it's fun, being from a track to now, he's watching all the Formula One and everything, and so it's been fun to share that with him as well.
Oh, I'm going to be in the U.S. next week, and in the World Endurance Championship, the next race is in Austin, Kota.
Okay.
So 6 hours of on the circuit of the Americas in Austin. So next race coming up.
That's going to be awesome. We'll be watching for you and checking in on you, and one of these days we'll connect in person. All right.
I look very much looking forward to that.
Thanks for being a part of this today. Anything else you want to add?
I think it was amazing. It is a beautiful conversation. I think it brings out exactly the highlights and the thought process behind many things that we're doing, that I'm doing, and I think I love your style on how casually and how communicative the entire interview was. So big thank you to you.